when you plant that seed, that seed, it starts to grow, but you have to nurture it. You have to water it. You have to plant it in good soil, right? And so you have to do all of those things and you have to be consistent with that plant in order for it to grow and be a beautiful plant. It's the same way with our business. It's the same way in life and goals that we're trying to reach is we have to be consistent and not look at, oh, it feels like I'm not moving forward, but you really are.
Hello, Jackie. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me on today.
So, I want to start our conversation with a question that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast. What is something that at some point felt impossible for you and now is your new normal?
Wow. Something that felt impossible for me that is my new normal is probably my brand, my wellness brand, and just starting that brand, being consistent with it, sticking with it. It looked like maybe that wasn't something possible. As a matter of fact, it wasn't something on the horizon. And I'll probably share a little bit of how it even came to pass or how it manifested. But I would say, my brand and now looking at it and looking at where I've come, it's like, wow, that really wasn't that impossible.
What about it was it that felt impossible?
Just really getting it out there, expanding it, capital. When you think about that as well, just all the things that goes with building a brand, building a business, it seems like it could just be impossible in the moment. But then when you're here in this moment, you're thinking, yeah, it was a little hard, but it really wasn't impossible. I think about a story that my father shared, and he shares this with us all the time. He's 83 now. And he said when he was a young boy, he never thought that he would see 83. Like, who would have imagined that I would see 2025 and I would be 83? That was probably impossible for him to wrap his mind around, right, at that time. And I think that can be for all of us some things that we see, we may see in the future that we want to do, but we just can't see it until we're really there and we've arrived in that situation.
Actually, it's really interesting you mentioned that like you want to do it, but we can't. In some ways, I'm just thinking about some of my impossibles that I have had where I might even see it, but it feels so far-fetched that it's
Yeah.
like, wow, I don't think I can do it, or I don't even know how to do it. And with that, maybe like, can you share a bit more on your thoughts or perspectives on that how? Because I think from my experience, and I tell this a lot, commit before you're ready. So commit to whatever it is that you want to do, whatever is that end result before you're ready. Because for the most part, you're never going to feel ready. It will always feel much, much bigger monster than it actually is. And we don't know how big it is until we actually are right in front of it and we're in it and we're in the arena and we're doing it. And
Mhm.
that how, in my experience, it's kind of like showing itself as you go and you take those steps. And
Mhm.
like what has been your experience with that? Like you have this impossible, which is building your brand, and it seems so far away. But then as you go, what has been your experience with that how to get there, how to get to that result?
The how can be the how can be fearful, right? You can be fearful of the how because you're not really sure how you're going to get there, but you know that you want to get there. So, how do you do it? You really have to take baby steps and you really have to plan it out.
Ugh, this never happens. Of course, it happens when we record. Sorry. Hopefully, last time. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I'll just start completely over. So we're talking about the how do you get there, right? Okay. So, how do you get to the unstoppable? You get there by taking baby steps. I like how you said the commitment, making a commitment. So, you make that commitment that you're going to do X, Y, and Z. You're going to do it at this time, at that time, because you cannot do everything at once. So, you do have to make those little small steps, baby steps, whatever works for you, right? And I think the analogy that we've used before was the baby. The baby comes out of the mom's womb, and the baby does not come out running, doing a 5K. The baby comes out, and then as the baby grows, the baby is now scooting, and then it's growing more. So now the baby is crawling, then the baby is wobbling, walking, then crawl, and then running. So all of those were steps, and all of those were small steps that the baby took, as well as there was a growth process. So again, everything's not going to happen overnight. We know that we live in a microwave society, that we want everything to happen instantly, but it doesn't. And so we have to be patient. That's how we can get to our unstoppable. I mean, or our unthinkable, rather, that we're not thinking that we can get there. We have to be patient. We have to take small steps. We have to be consistent, you know, because sometimes, like that baby, we're going to stand up and we'll fall. And that fall can be discouraging at times, but we just have to know that that is a learned lesson. We have to get ourselves back up and keep moving and keep being consistent. And I feel that if we do those things, which are very simple steps, we can reach what we thought was not reachable.
Okay, so I have a few follow-up questions here. So with that, sticking with the baby analogy, or like example, uh, I think it is viable to talk on managing expectations because I think a lot of times we once we start to do something we expect, and in some ways it's also what we see online with overnight success and all this kind of stuff. We expect that we will get to that result without the falling down, without the failure, or we it will be a smooth sailing to get there. And if it's not, we now make it mean that I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, instead of seeing it that's part of the process. What would be your advice, or maybe what has helped you to navigate those situations or manage your own expectations when it comes to building building those building blocks towards that impossible or whatever might be the goal? It doesn't even have to be only the impossible goal, but what are some of the things that has helped you or even like people that you have worked with?
Right. So some of those things would be comparison. And you mentioned about what you see other people do. Our journey is our journey, and it's our own race to run. And when we get to the finish line, is when we get to the finish line. And so a lot of times, I think what happens is we see other people, we compare ourselves and our journeys to theirs, and we feel that, and we set these really high expectations that we should be here, we should be doing this because that person is there. And what I want to say about that is we have to be very careful with comparison, because comparison is a killer. And not only that, social media can be anything that you want it to be. So you could see someone doing all of these grand things of what they're posting, but they may not be there. And so we have to be very careful with that. And we just have to know that our race is our race. And we have to do what's best for us at the end of the day. And that's what I tell people. And your expectations, yes, you can have a high expectation. You can set the bar high for yourself, but you just have to know that it is a process. And it is going to take time for you to get there. You know, that's just like, I'm not very familiar with gymnastics, but when I see the gymnast doing, I think it's like the high bar, and they're, I don't know what that's called, but they're running with that stick in
Oh,
their hand,
pole
the
vault.
pole.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, try to jump over that high bar. The expectation is, yes, they want to meet that goal. They want to be there. But that bar may not be all the way at the top all the time. It could be here and then it goes here and it just goes up and it goes up, right? But you have to work. That's still like the baby example we use. It still takes time and you still have to work toward that goal of whatever that goal is. So don't feel that if you're not here and you think that you should be, I don't know, just here's an example. You think that you should be making $1 million in 3 months because somebody said that if you do this, you're going to make $1 million in 30 days. You know, that may have been true for them, but that may not be true for you. So, what you have to do is just work your plan and be patient with yourself. And again, as long as you are consistent, that is the key. That you keep going and that you're consistent, you will reach those goals. And and let me say this too, when it comes down to expectations, I don't do New Year's resolutions, right? But I do set goals for myself at the beginning of the year. And I set times, deadlines, or timelines of when I want to complete those particular goals. Sometimes that does not happen. It does not happen because we live in a real world. There's life that happens. And so sometimes we may not meet that deadline, right? But that doesn't mean that we have to stop. That doesn't mean that that expectation that we set was not a good expectation. It just means that it's going to take us a little bit longer to get there. But if we keep moving, we will get there.
It's it's really interesting that you mentioned that last piece because there's something that I read or heard where there's one person who said that if I'm not where I want to be, there's two things. Either I haven't been doing it long enough or I haven't found the right way to get there. But it doesn't mean anything about me as like I'm a failure, I'm not good enough. And I think that's a lot of times where it's important to find a way to distinguish between me as a person and what I find or like base my value on and then what I do. Because it's something that I see a lot, even funny that you mentioned pole vault. I literally today talked to one athlete that I'm working with that is pole vaulter, and we were talking about that height of it, and how a lot of it actually is mental and managing that. Which is kind of interesting when it comes to goals that we set. And you might have noticed this with some, if not some people, then might be like a lot of us out there that do that. Instead of setting big goal, the goal that we actually want to go for, and in some ways it scares us, we set realistic goal. I know I can check this one off. I know I
Yeah.
can get this done. And there's something about that, and I have seen this with the high performers where it's that perfectionism where unless I check everything off, and I had it so much myself, unless I check everything off, it doesn't count kind of thing. But now I am in the mindset, if I get 80% done, that's good because for me to get to 100, I need to be stretched. That's where I actually grow and expand because if I get 100, it probably was too easy for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a really good analogy of what you were saying is setting those realistic goals. That's kind of like me with I don't call it a diet because I'm setting myself up for failure each time I say that. So I call it a lifestyle change, right? So I'm making these lifestyle changes. And how am I doing that? I'm setting realistic things for me. So chips that I know is so bad for me. I love chips. Like I just love chips. Um, but my goal is I'm not going to eat chips. Now, will I eat them maybe every now and then? Yeah, I may, treat myself every now and then, but I have not had chips in a while, in months. I have not had chips. But that's a realistic thing of me not saying, oh, I'm going to cut cold, just cold turkey. I'm going to not do this. when I know that, okay, that's not, it can't be realistic, but for me, it's not. So I'm just going to take baby steps with my lifestyle change, cut out chips, good. Drink more water, check. I'm able to check those things off the box. And that goes with anything that we do in life. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
I also had a question on consistency because it's something that I think we all get it. For you to get results, you need to be consistent. You need to be taking these steps consistently. But how to navigate it where you do things consistently and you don't really see the progress. It's kind of like you're still planting those seeds. You don't see the growth. And sometimes it might take literally years until you start see really like measurable results. Um, how to trust that process to continue doing those tasks consistently if you don't have real-time instant feedback of the progress that you're making with those consistent steps.
Yeah. I feel that everything that you do, small wins, that's what we call them. All of that leads up to the goal. It leads up to what you're doing. So when you talk about consistency and you talk about not seeing what's happening, really things are happening. But what happens is we're looking for the big things. We're looking for the big progress. But, excuse me, but we are making progress as long as we're consistent. And it may be the small things. With being consistent, and when you mentioned about how people may feel discouraged because they may not see the progress, you're always making progress when you're being consistent. There's always some growth and when you just keep going and being consistent. I feel what happens a lot of times is that people are looking for the big wins and they're not seeing the small wins that happens. And so like for me, for instance, I'll use my brand and my product. My products, they sell. I do quite a few wholesale. So before that started happening, I was like, oh man, my e-commerce, my products are not selling on my website. But I continue to plant those seeds. I continue to market it. I continue to talk about it. I continue to share samples. And I continued, as you stated, to plant those seeds. That's all a part of my growth. And that's all a part of me growing my business and staying consistent. And then eventually, it caught on. That's just like a plant. When you plant that seed, that seed, it starts to grow, but you have to nurture it. You have to water it. You have to plant it in good soil, right? And so you have to do all of those things and you have to be consistent with that plant in order for it to grow and be a beautiful plant. It's the same way with our business. It's the same way in life and goals that we're trying to reach is we have to be consistent and not look at, oh, it feels like I'm not moving forward. But you really are, because every day that you're putting in the work for your business, and I'm going to use this business as an example, but it could be anything in life. But every day that you're putting something in and you're putting in the work, you are making progress. You are making progress.
I think also something that might be valuable to mention here with the small wins, because I know that for me it was kind of like what you said about like if it wasn't big enough, it's like it doesn't count kind of thing. But also remembering that I usually use the example of climbing a mountain. You have this big vision or big goal that you're stepping towards, but the only way how you get there is by taking those small steps. And even with that, it's like a lot of times you can get discouraged by looking at how big the goal is, but then actually the ratio at which you would should look up there and down at what the steps you're taking is way different, because for you to actually get there, you need to navigate what's right in front of you, which are those baby steps. And I think it's also and this might be like the next thing for us to discuss is you have this big goal. How do you break it down so that you actually, as you take those steps, which I think can help with that dealing that uncertainty, am I actually planting the seeds? Am I not? Are they growing? Are they not? Knowing that you have broken it down, and then as you take those steps, you trust that this step that I have taken, I have thought about it. I know that this is a step where I have had like mentor or coach or somebody help me to come up with those steps. As long as I take this step today, and take it again tomorrow and take it again tomorrow, I am coming higher up in that hell or getting closer to there instead of looking at, oh my gosh, I'm so far and I don't know if I'm actually going in the right direction. How to navigate that goal setting, and especially when it comes to not just setting the goal, but how do you break it down? How do you then start to take the steps to actually get there?
Yeah. So you're looking at your goal and of what you want to do. And then you break it down by just the little steps that you're making, as we just talked about. When you're talking about breaking down your steps and breaking down that big goal, you do that by, of course, you're looking at the goal and then you're breaking down what can I do now? What can I do in this moment? What can be done maybe in 6 months? What can be done in a year? And if you have, say, a 3-year plan, then you're breaking it down for each one of those stages, if that makes sense. So, say for instance, um, we'll talk about we'll talk about the plant, I guess. Again, we'll talk about the plant. So you've planted the seed, and in 3 months, it's going to start to sprout up. Depending on what it is, it's going to start to sprout up. And so, in that 3 months' time, you need to do X, Y, and Z to help this plant sprout up. It works the same way in life. You break down these goals, and we talked about this a little bit earlier about being realistic. That's really the key. You have consistency and you have being realistic. Set realistic goals, and you should know like what that is for you, and what that looks like for you. And so when you set those goals, it makes it easy for you to break it down and to break down how you're going to reach the big ultimate goal that you have set. So it all goes back really just to baby steps, just breaking it down to baby steps, because you're not going to climb the mountain right away. You're not going to get to the peak, to the top right away. Um, I know, like, we've gone zip lining before. Zip lining, you're taking those steps. They're taking you, especially for people like me that's scared, right? Scared of heights. They're taking us on different steps to warm us up. And so we go maybe 5 different places or different stages, right? And then we get to the very top. And when we get to the top, we're warmed up and we're ready to zoom across the jungle, the lake, wherever we're zip lining. So it is the same with life. And I like to use examples like that because I feel that when people can hear a real life example of something, then they'll be like, you know what? Oh, that's not as hard as I think or as I thought that it was. When you can put an example, a real life example to it.
Can you talk about the importance of patience? Especially, I think it's something that in my generation, in younger generation, we are growing up a lot with getting everything instantly. You have access to everything instantly. And with that, it's like when it comes to building skills, when it comes to accomplishing something, building your skill set, building your character, the everything, it takes patience, it takes time, and with that it requires patience. What's the role of patience in achieving goals, especially big goals? And do you have any advice on how to cultivate it or build it?
Yes. Patience is patience is very, very important. And you have to practice patience. It doesn't just happen right away. And as you were saying, with the younger generation, I'm in the older generation. And so even for me, it took time. And even now, there are certain times that I find myself being so anxious and ready for something to happen. And I have to step back and say, okay, wait a minute, Jackie, you got to have patience. Timing is everything. And so with patience, again, really it's just practice. And it's just knowing that it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen like you think that it should happen. And yeah, all of us are living in a microwave popcorn society that we think that at the snap, we're not bewitched. We can't twinkle our nose and it's going to happen. We have to put in the work. You have to put in the work and you have to wait for it to grow and for the process to happen. I think mentors is very good too, to help you and to keep you accountable and to keep you on track and help you with that patience. Because a lot of times mentors are people that are more mature and they can really help you on your journey to whatever the goal is that you're trying to get to, and they can hold you accountable for that. So I think those are some things that that can really help with your patience. And of course, just having that right circle around you as well, having the support system that you have, that they're going to tell you the truth. They're not going to be your yes man, and be like, "Oh, girl, yeah, that's going to happen, and that's going to be next week," and they know it's not going to be till next year. But you have those people in your life that is also going to help you stay on track and be realistic about what you're going through and to get to your goals.
Okay, you touched on a really important topic, which is the support system, friendships, relationships, and also with that, accountability and honesty, where it's about saying what you need to hear versus what you want to hear. Um, and in some ways, I think it's something that might be less. It's not as easy to find nowadays because I feel like we tiptoe around feelings, we tiptoe around emotions, but we we do need to have those hard conversations. We do, and I have experienced it myself where when somebody calls me out and keeps me accountable, does it feel good? No. But does it help me to grow? Yes, a lot. And that's where I think how well, one question would be how to know if your current assuming that somebody who wants to grow, somebody who wants to develop in their life, or they feel like they might be stuck in some ways, but they do have vision, they do have this big goal. If if this person is now listening, how can they identify whether their circle is helping them, serving them, or they might be keeping them stuck, or maybe supporting them just being at plateau level?
Yeah. Wow. Um, your support circle, no matter what, your genuine support circle should be able to give you constructive criticism. And you are right. We are living in a time to where it's very difficult to talk to people, because people wear their feelings on their sleeves. And so you have to know, how to say it, how to word it, because our delivery matters too. Even our support circle that's giving us that constructive criticism, the way that we deliver the message, it matters. We can't be harsh. We have to do it in the spirit of love because we that's the person that we love and we want them to succeed. We want them to do good. So we have to deliver the message in that same manner of love. So what I would say is for the person that's delivering the message, just be intentional on how you deliver it. And especially if you know that that person may not receive it well, then really try your best to be intentional on how you word it, how you deliver it. You know, you may have to take them out for a cup of coffee and you're talking and you just ease into the conversation, right? So where they're not feeling that they are being attacked. A prime example for me, this happened was that one of the ladies, I call her my sister, my business sister, every time she posted something, it was grammar errors. It was just all kinds of crazy going on with them posts. And I'll never forget one of our friends said to me, I'm not going to say anything to her. And I'm like, no, like we're supposed to be women empowerment. We're supposed to be helping one another. We want to see each other succeed and grow. So we should not, we can't just sit on the sideline and see somebody just go to hell, right? So I called her and I first texted her and I said, hey, do you have some time for you and I to have a conversation? And she said, yeah. So I called her and I was, just telling her that she's doing a great job, which she is, growing her business. I said, but I've noticed that you have this going on, and I've noticed a couple of misspellings. And she said, oh, I use what is it? Text to speech or text to
Mm.
whatever she was using that and she wasn't proofreading. She was just using it and posting. So I was like, oh, I said, okay. I said, well, I began to tell her like different little apps that she could use to, after she did that, pop it in there. It can proof it, make it more polished and professional. And she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. She received it. She was open. And now, like I'm looking at her post, I'm like, okay, you go, girl. But she had to be open too. But I had to set the stage. I had to set the environment for her to receive it. And so I think that that's important as well, for people to receive that constructive criticism and for us to really be a support, to one another. When we say that on our platforms, like we really have to live what we say. We really have to live what we post. And, my prayer every day is, like, God, use me and help me to serve others because that's what we're here to do is to serve and to help however that we can. And so your support system is very, very important. And they're going to be there to give you that advice. They're going to be there to for you to cry, when you need a shoulder to cry on, they're going to be there. And just to listen. They may not say anything in that moment, but so your support system is really important. And you don't have to have a lot of people. It could be one or two, because a lot of times I know, like for me, my circle is very small. It's very small. And I know that in that small circle, I can call on certain ones to talk about this, that, and I know that they're going to be there to support me. So that's very important.
Uh, I had a question on receiving the feedback because delivery as deliverer is one thing, but then do you have any advice in receiving that feedback, constructive criticism, and how to, because a lot of times it can feel triggering. It can cause certain emotions. And I think it's especially true when it actually is true. Um, and but again, depends on the delivery because sometimes delivery can be quite harsh, even if there's some truth to it. How to receive the criticism, especially when it's harsh, but there is some truth to it. How to extract that instead of being offended and feeling hurt, which sometimes it can, especially if you're not used to receiving that. Do you have any advice with that?
Yeah. So for the receiver, a lot of times they know that it's truth, but a lot of times because they have been hurt, by harsh words, by whatever it is, they have been hurt by, they've been betrayed, then a lot of times they have this barrier. And so when you are delivering the message, the wall is up, they're offended, they're all the emotions that goes along with that. So I feel that that goes back to the deliverer. Not saying that it's all on the deliverer, but the deliverer, if this is someone that you know and that's in your inner circle like that, um, then you should know that person. You should know what they deal with, what they've gone through. And so that's why you have to be very intentional on how you deliver the message and choose your words really wisely. I mean, you're not taking away the truth of what you're trying to deliver to them, but you do need to choose your words very wisely on how you deliver it, especially if you already know that this person has been hurt, and they walk in offense. Because people walk in offense and they are offended for so many different reasons, things that have happened in their lives, trauma that has happened that has them like that. So when you're coming to them in love and sharing with them something constructive in love, in the moment they may not see it like that because of the past. But you still have to do your part. And eventually I feel that those people will open up and they will be, more open. But they also have to trust you. That's another good thing too, is that trust. That, they're trusting that what you're saying is coming from a person that is credible, that they're trusting that what you're telling them is coming from a good place, and you're not trying to be mean to them, or you're not trying to belittle them in some kind of way. So I think that's important too, is, to have that level of trust.
Speaking on trust, that was a one question that I wanted to ask, which I think you slightly are already answering with what you said about like what builds trust. Because I wrote down from what you said, like one of the things is credibility, then also having good intentions or that person feeling like you actually care for them and you do want the best for them. Is there anything else that plays role in the trust?
Yeah. And just being there, I feel showing up for that person, and being there for them so they know that they can trust you. And if they ever share anything with you, and it could be the smallest thing. It may not be anything that's super confidential, but and they could be testing you to see, oh, let me see what Jackie's going to do with this information. And so, they have to be able, so just little bitty things that they can trust you with. And trust is something that is built. It doesn't happen right away. I don't trust people right off the bat. It has to be built. And so it's the same way in our relationships and our circles that we do that. But as long as we're staying consistent with who we are. We're being honest, we're being transparent, um, and all those things, then we're building that trust. I feel that you can break down the walls of the people that you're trying to talk to, because we're like, our brand, it's all about you living well and thinking well and thriving in life. I don't have all the answers and I don't have it all together myself. I have people that I rely on, mentors, people that I talk to help me when I go through different things. But what I do know is when I'm talking to people one on one, when I'm dealing with people one on one, they have to trust you. They have to know that you're living the life that you're talking to them about. Not saying that I'm not going to fall and that they're not going to fall, but they have to know that. And that's a part of your credibility. And you have to have character. You have to have character. What you see right here on this screen with me is what you're going to see behind closed doors. I'm treating people, my family, with love and kindness. The people that I meet, I can't go out and talk to you about you need to do this, this, and this. And I'm doing the total opposite behind closed doors. It doesn't work like that. And so, that's that again, all of that ties into um, you being able to deliver and for the people to receive the message because they're looking at your character of that's just like with jobs, right? Jobs now they're asking for your social media because they want to see, let me see what she's doing. Is she twerking? With no clothes on the weekends? Do I want to have her as the VP of my company? No. And you may be qualified, right? But when they see that, they're thinking, that's a little questionable. So our character matters for
Uh,
sure.
so we talked quite a bit on the journey itself, but I think it's really valuable also to touch on the starting the journey because a lot of times that actually can feel like the hardest, the biggest thing, especially when you have this big goal or it's a goal that has been at the back of your mind and you never feel ready because for the most part when you do something you have never done, you don't feel ready. You can't predict what can go wrong, what could go wrong, what are the steps and what are some of the failures or setbacks that might come with it. And and it's something that I have seen how a lot of times we already have regrets before we have even started to take the step or we have made a decision to actually go for it or we start to have doubts or we start to question things and we haven't even taken the first step and it feels such a big step or big wall to step over just to get to the first step. Do you have any advice to navigate starting something?
Yeah. You just have to do it. And I know that's easier said than done, but it's never going to be a perfect moment. You're never going to have the amount of money that you want. You're never going to have maybe any other type of resources that you need. So you just have to start. And once you take that leap of faith and once you step out and you start, then you'll start to see, okay, yeah, it may be a little hard, but it's not as hard as I thought. But if you never step out, you'll never know what can be done. So, just say if you're going to start a business, go get your name, go get your DBA. That's a start. You getting your DBA, get your EIN, get your bank account, all of the things that are important to starting a business, an LLC, or if you're going to be a nonprofit, like get all your paperwork, just like start that goes back to your steps. You might do the DBA, the bank account, that might be in 1 week. And then the next couple of weeks, you do something else, and then you do something else. But as long as you're doing those things and as long as you're stepping out to do them, then you're going to do it. You're going to make it. And we have everything that we need inside of us a lot of times. We don't realize it because for ourselves, we don't see ourselves as maybe having everything that we need. And I know a lot of times we can give to others. We can help set them up in businesses. We can do all the great things for them. But when it comes to us, we feel, oh, I'm not ready. But why are you not ready? You've been doing this. You've been doing the dress rehearsal forever. So now it's time for you to get out here on the big stage, right? To do what you need to do. So what I would say to someone is just to start. Just step out, take that leap of faith and just do it. And then as you're going along the way, and then pull from the resources that you have. Many of us have quite a few resources, people that we've met along the way in our journey, and so let's pull from them, like make a list of names of people that you've met, what industries they're in. Let them know, hey, I'm doing this. Let them know that this is what's happening. And then they can help. Or if they can't help you, they can point you in the direction of someone else. But if you never get out there, if you never ask, then it won't happen.
Yeah, I see. There's one thing that I realized, I think it was when I started my podcast, is that a lot of times we have this thought that for us to be ready, we need to map out everything from A to Z, and then
Hmm.
we will be ready to start. And it's
Yeah,
like, first of all, you can't map out, you don't know what you don't know, and you find what you don't know only as you do. But also, as you take those steps, one is that you actually start to, it's similar to confidence. A lot of times we wait or we think we need to feel confident to do something, but we actually gain confidence by doing it. It's the other way around. And it's the same with starting, because you also mentioned that you never know what can be done. And also I wrote, and what you're capable of, because you can't really know what you're capable of until you put in situation yourself in situation where you can explore that and you can actually see how much is actually inside of you, how much you're actually capable of, how resourceful you can be. It's really hard for us, or it can be easy for us to downplay our capabilities because we might have not been in situations that make us to explore what is it that I actually can do? How far can I stretch myself? How much can I get done? And then when we are in those situations, that's when we get those answers. And if the answer is negative, where it might end up in setback or a failure, it's like, okay, good to know. What can I learn? Get
yeah,
up, go
yeah,
again. And now this time, you now have it similar to the games. When you play the game, if you now lose, it's like, oh, but what if I lose and it doesn't count? It's like, you lost, but now you know the path, you have experience, so you can get closer to the finish quicker, or that like last monster that is the last challenge. You know the way to get there, even though you start over, but it's not like you start over from zero, you now have experience. And I think that's
yeah,
something that's really easy to discount, is that we focus on the failure or initial setbacks instead of the amount of experience that you gain.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And we shouldn't look at failures as failures. Failures are really learned lessons that we have learned along the way so that we know that the next time we are going to do it differently because we've learned from that. And so I think a lot of times too, it's our mindset and how we think and then the words that we say. So instead of saying failure, we'll just say, "Oh, that was just a learned lesson. Hey, I got it now." So when we change our mindsets and how we think about things and how we think about whether it's a failure or whatever it may be, then that also helps to make the journey easier for us. When we change the words that we speak, change the things that we think, it makes it easier for us.
Before I ask you the last question, where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about what you do?
Yeah. So they can reach me on my website. Well, actually, my website is Jackie O, which is JACQUIEOOH.com. I'm on Instagram as Jackie O, Facebook, Jackie O blog. And so if they go to my website, they can get to my YouTube, my Facebook, my Instagram page. And we have our Motivational Monday to where we talk to women all over the world about all types of topics, and so all of that information is housed on our website as well as our Glow collection, our skincare line.
All
Yeah.
right. And we will have a link in the show notes as well. So, last question I have is, what's the impossible that you're chasing now?
What's possible that I'm
What's
chasing
the
now?
impossible that you're chasing now?
Oh, oh, let me see. Um, wow. The impossible that I'm chasing now, I would say, um, is to, I, I never really thought about that because to be honest, not that I do not have anything impossible, probably all of the goals that I have are impossible. But I just never really thought about them as being impossible to reach. So I'll just
So
share like,
definitely has been a mindset shift around what's impossible for you.
yeah. So I guess what I'm going to say for that would be with my skincare products. One of the goals that I have, and this was a goal, it wasn't a goal last year, but I wrote it down last year for this year, is to actually be in a commercial space. So where my products are housed, and I'm really running my business that way, in this space. So I guess you could say that that could be something that I don't think is impossible, but I want to share this really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to share this really quickly because that goal that I wrote down then possibly will be before the end of the year. So I am an entrepreneur, but I still work a full-time job. And I'm actually a contractor is, what I do is a contractor. So the particular assignment that I have been on for 18 months, I was told last week that it is ending on the 31st of this month. And so I technically was only supposed to be on that assignment for like 6 months, but they kept extending me. And then they told me just last week that technically I was not supposed to be there past 12 months. But I guess maybe I was doing a great job, right? So I've been there for 18 months. So I was a little, like a little down because I'm thinking, oh God, this is not the a good time for all of this to happen. Even though I have my business, I'm selling products, I'm doing all the things. Um, it's still, I have a daughter in college, we got bills, just life. And so I was feeling a little down about it, but I said, okay, nope, let me pick myself up and let me do what I need to do. So I called my husband and I was telling him, and he said, honey, what if you just did Jackie O full time? And I'm like, huh? Like, we got all these bills. My daughter's in college. I'm paying for her tuition. Like, I said, yeah, let me just pray about it. So that was that day. So that was Tuesday of last week. Wednesday, I was talking to one of my sister-in-laws, and I think it's been 2 years now for her. She's just started her private practice. She's an orthopedic surgeon. So I was telling her what had happened, and she said, girl, she said, these jobs are, they be doing their own thing. You should just do your business full time. I'm like, oh my God, this is the second person. Like, is that confirmation? Like, God, are you telling me that I need to do this? You know what? That might be the impossible right there. Um, and so I'm like, oh, are you telling me? And so I was telling her, yeah, I'm just gonna pray about it. I don't know. She's like, why do you need to pray about it? Like, I'm the second person that's told you this. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But the fear, right? The fear of the unknown, of not having every 2 weeks, well, every week for me, a check coming in that, and not saying that I can't do the business because I know it. I just have to get out there and just really do it. But that could be fearful and that could seem like something impossible to do. But can it be done? Absolutely. So, you know what? I think I just answered your question with just sharing that story.
And I can be the third person to
I
push you
know.
into doing it. Because actually, I'm really, thank you for sharing this because it's such a good example of commit before you're ready, do it before you're ready. And also how we kind of set these glass ceilings on what I think I can do or what's a timeline. And it's so funny because I had something really similar happen to me at the beginning of the year. I lost like one big client out of nowhere, out of nowhere. And I didn't know until I was on the call. And pretty much like right the moment the call was done, we are done. And I remember I felt really proud of myself because I didn't get triggered. I didn't go like, it doesn't feel pleasant. I went to the gym, and as I was in the gym, I'm like, what an interesting way to nudge me to put fire up my ass to go and do like full speed into getting more clients, being more aggressive. And but it's again, it's different perspectives. How can we, the situation is still the same, but it could be the situation where now you're in victim mentality, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's, I still have this to do, I still have that to do. I don't know if I can find a way, and maybe I need to look for like another job, or like it's reasonable response. But also it also goes a lot with what you said about support, having those people that do believe in you, and they're like, why don't you just go do this? Like, you already have been doing it, it's working. And now if you put even more time and energy into that, it will grow. You will start to see results. Again, planting those seeds, maybe not to the timeline that we would want it to grow. I can so relate to that story. And I think it's so valuable that that you're sharing it, because it is the, I think one of the biggest challenges in entrepreneurship is navigating that uncertainty, navigating that risk, where once you have it stable enough, even then you can't really know. It's not the same as like, you have paycheck coming in at any moment, anything can change, and you're just, sometimes you don't even expect it, you don't know how to navigate it. But then that, in some ways, it opens up a new door that you're like, maybe I just didn't see this. Or it's something that I have been thinking a lot, is that not everything in my life has to happen on my timeline. And my timeline might not be right.
Yeah.
So that's where it's certain things I'm now like starting to trust more with things that are happening, or pivots that are happening, where it's like, does it make sense to do this now? Logically, not really, but it feels like the right thing to do. So let's just go for that, see what will come from it. And at the very least, I get a lot of experience.
Yeah, exactly. Because you took that risk, you know? And that's the beauty of, I think about kids, because when I helped my daughters start their business, they were young. They didn't think about all of the things that we as adults, well, because they didn't have the responsibilities. But the thing about kids is that they're so pure and innocent in just their thoughts of things. And so they're like, oh, yeah, let's do this. And so they were risk takers and didn't even know it. But I think with us as adults, we're skeptical to take that risk because of the unknowns.
Yeah,
But
and in
when
some
we
ways you learn over the years to play it safe.
Yes, yes. And we're taught to play it safe. You know, we're taught you graduate, you go to college, you get a corporate job,
And then you're
and
safe.
that's what you do. But really, it could be different. I mean, and we weren't taught that, yeah, we were taught education, go to school, but my father has always told us, the path that, and not everyone is going to be an entrepreneur, but the path to true success and doing the way you want to do with your business is to be an entrepreneur. And so we were always raised like that. But I think in society, as you were saying, we're taught to play it safe. And so that's in the back of our minds at all times. Oh, I got to play it safe. But we're not living in a safe world. So anything happens in our world, right? Um, but yeah, so I think that could be an unstoppable thing, or not unstoppable, but something that
Impossible.
impossible, that I may have thought that was impossible, but it's really not impossible at the end of the day. It just may happen sooner than what I expected it to happen.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing this story. It was amazing. And I'm sure many people can, to what you said, through examples, that's where we actually connect, and we can hear that, oh, I'm not the only one. It's okay to have setbacks. It's okay to have those moments, and you're like, I thought I'm like, this is so stressful, I can't deal with it. And somebody from the side is like, why don't you do that? Maybe it's an opportunity to step into this more. And it's really valuable to hear your story, learn from you. And yeah, I appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.